Hi, this is Wednesday, June 19th. So I am recording side one, which is the proponents of maintaining zoos. Just a quick heads up if you're watching a Zoom class. Make sure that you have the links to the articles. They're all on the advanced roster website. I'm only going to do partial of the video, but I do think it adds a lot of background information. So this week, students have really appreciated the videos, especially the perspective. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to share the screen. And just give you kind of an overview, everyone.
Change out of all recognition. There are quite a lot of different species around the planet, which we wouldn't have today if it wasn't for zoos.
What do you think the ideas?
Claire's. All through history, we've seen royal families of powerful people, emperors, have collections of animals.
The king who was a good hunter was probably a good warrior, probably protect his people. Killing a lion or a bear was a big deal, but bringing back a live one, it showed even more power. Virtually all the history of zoos is about human control of nature.
And it was a way of showing off. Queen Charlotte, her gift to everybody that she liked was to give them a kangaroo. And eventually, we get the first modern zoo opening in London in 1828.
To be able to suddenly see a giraffe for the first time probably was absolutely bonkers.
Wasn't really an appreciation of animals needing certain things to have a good life. So you would see them in barren boxes, effectively, just as you would see a specimen in a natural history museum.
The story was, here's an object, divorced from habitat, divorced from evolution.
His name is, by the way, Knucklehead.
Knucklehead?
Well, as a rule, tapirs are rather stupid and unintelligent.
Animals were thought of as basically automatons just responding in a reflexive manner with no feelings of pain or any kind of emotional depth. But that's really shifted. Now there's much more of an understanding that we really need to look at their own type of intelligence and how they live in their world.
The school children that come here to the wildlife park, all of them go away learning the messages that we know for sure are going to make a true difference to the animals back out into the wild.
The biggest threat to wildlife comes from people. And most people live in cities, so zoos are very important because they provide an educational opportunity for people to learn about what the impacts of their daily activities are in faraway places.
The zoo, by becoming a public attraction, if it's done properly, it seems to me like a pretty good idea. The animals have a good life, people enjoy it, they learn something, hopefully they get involved in conservation.
Pretty much all good zoos throughout the world are participators, or they help to support and fund a whole host of in situ conservation programs. And if it wasn't for those programs, the world would be looking very different right now.
Zoo populations of animals are insurance populations. Certain species, due to what's going on the planet at the moment, the only way that we can stop them from going extinct will be to bring them into captivity. As we learn to adapt to things like climate change, we are going to see an increasing role for zoos.
Okay, I'm going to stop there because it kind of gets sad from there. It's going to show you the dark side as you go through. So that was about 2 minutes and 47 seconds that we watched the video. So if you were in class or if you're looking at the articles, you'll notice I really struggled, honestly, to find content, which tells me this argument is going to be half as strong as the opponent's side. I wasn't prepared for how awful zoos are. So I'm going to try to tell you just what the other side's going to say so I can present the argument. And what the other side's going to say is that any animal held in captivity, and placed in a habitat that is underwhelming, is a form of abuse. Zoos, as you watched in the video, have a history, and that history comes from the aristocracy, from the wealthy. And, you know, it began with hunting these wildlife animals as a trophy. And that can be traced back as far back as Egypt and Mesopotamia, 2500 BCE. Then, you know, as the video said, and the article in two places also says this, these kings thought, wait, instead of killing them, let's capture them. And so this began this voyeuristic viewing of wild animals. And then this evolved into, you know, at first it was, let's show all our other wealthy friends, right? And this evolved into, well, why not the average person? Why can't they see a wild animal as well? And then we'll charge a ticket price. So we'll make money off the animals. So it was always, and this is what the other side's going to say, it was always about the visitor. It was always putting people over animals. And the original conditions animals were held in were horrific. And you could probably relate to that, having experienced the pandemic, knowing what it feels like to be isolated and not be able to leave your house. Yeah, you'll go crazy. And some of us did, myself included, a little bit. Okay, so we're going to start with the first article, The Conservation Mission of Zoos, dated May 6, 2024. This comes from Nabila Aziz, the author, who has a background in biosciences and natural resource management. So she gives this kind of past little history section here, and so did the video. So this is your lead. What a great lead. Just where in the world did zoos come from? And this fascination began with aristocracy, killing animals, then, you know, trying to capture them alive and then showing them off as trophies. They kept their own private menageries. And then by the 1700s, public zoological parks, or zoos, became an institution serving as recreational facilities to draw in public crowds while making substantial profits. So one of the best arguments to promote zoos is the fact that nearly 50% of the world's people live in cities disconnected from nature's, which means zoos and aquariums, so aquariums are connected with zoos, are the only way these 50% of the population would ever be able to encounter a wild animal. If you're wealthy, you can go to Africa and go on a safari, right? I'm not saying I'm wealthy, but we swam with the dolphins. And I didn't know then what I know now, how much that stressed the dolphins and how awful, you know, SeaWorld animals and those dolphins are treated. It's not good. We'll talk about that on the other side. But for our argument, the same as the video promoted, if 50% of people can go to a zoo, perhaps we can educate them. So zoos have, you know, plaques or signs talking about, you know, the species, where their habitat is, are they endangered, what we can do to protect them. And perhaps the idea here is, the mission here is, if we educate the public, they will care. So they will develop a sense of animal conservation. Animal conservation is defined as the protection of animals in their habitats. So if zoos can create meaningful engagement with communities, they can make a profound impact on perception of zoos. In a 2007 study, a study by Patricia and others, conservation and education were found to be the key elements in the mission statements of zoos. The Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and you're going to hear that name a lot, AZA, reveal the general public rate conservation and education as the most important roles of zoos. So if that's what the public says they rank, guess what public zoos now say? They mention in their mission statement conservation and education as the most important aspects of zoo culture. So as we go through here in the article, I want to go to why zoos and aquariums are beneficial. This is an article from 2020. So Association of Zoos and Aquariums, this is an organization that really holds the highest standards. So a zoo affiliated with AZA, accredited with AZA, has really an approach that centers on animal welfare, conservation, research, education, as well as recreation. You can't, here's the bottom line. Zoos are for profit. They need people to buy tickets to see the animals so they can continue to do their research. And that is a reality. And people will go. But the educational perspective, I think a lot of public schools and private schools have a lot of field trips to zoos. And I do think that zoos encourage that. They are seeking that connection. So one of the arguments in favor of zoos in several places throughout the articles that I've provided is this may be the last place where we will see an extinct species. We as humans are destroying animal habitats through deforestation, building of highways, industries, and climate change, really. So the International Union for Conservation of Nature is a red list of threatened species. The most comprehensive information is found on this IUCN list. Visitors at accredited zoos and aquariums can see many species on this list as threatened with extinction, some of which are being managed under AZA, under species survival plan programs. So this may be the only place some animals will exist. They will die out in the wild. So that's a really impactful reason that zoos are important. So in 2019, AZA and its members spent $230 million in field conservation work in 127 countries, focusing on population biology and monitoring, reintroduction, conservation education. You get the picture. So of the profits that zoos make, especially the accredited zoos, they are putting that into research. AZA Safe, Saving Animals from Extinction, is their flagship conservation program, and it brings AZA accredited zoos and aquariums together to focus their collective expertise and leverage their massive audiences to save species like sea turtles and American red wolves. There are currently 28 safe species, engaging more than 300 partner organizations in the work of saving species. So why is this a good argument? Well, they're not just providing a recreational facility for the public to come in and view animals. They are working on animal conservation in animal habitats outside of the zoo. AZA accredited zoos help reintroduce animals into the wild. So this is, going to be one of those, the other side argues, there's just not that much reintroduction that's possible. Reintroduction is rare because once an animal is brought to a zoo, they usually die in the zoo, and usually live half the length of their lifetime that they would in the wild in the zoo, because they are tamed, they imprint on their caregivers, so they lose the survival instincts of the wild. Not to mention, some of their habitats are simply lost. There's no place to reintroduce them. So that's another one of the examples. The California condors, and there's a specific example here that I really, really love. In 1982, there were 22 California condors. By 1987, that number dropped to 9. So they collaborated. There was a California Condor Recovery Program established with the San Diego Zoo, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the California Department of Fish and Game, and the National Audubon Society, as well as the LA Zoo. So the condors were bred, and the young were raised by people wearing hand puppets that mimicked adult birds to avoid young condors imprinting on their caregivers. In 1992, the first condors bred in managed care were released into the wild in California. The population of California condors has now grown to more than 400. Remember, we were down to 9. 240 condors are living in the wild. So this is a conservation success story. They're also doing outside work outside of zoos where they repair ecosystems. So Ozza Safe, Saving Animals from Extinction, created an orangutan program in 2018 to focus on the threats in the orangutan habitat. So CREATE, Corridor Restoration for Animals Threatened and Endangered, was a project started by the Kansas City Zoo, who partnered with Ape Malaysia. This is a partnership supported by Ozza Safe orangutan program. So they hired local community members to plant, maintain, and grow trees to connect wildlife corridors. CREATE supports the local economy and repairs the ecosystem. So in November 2018, a team of Ozza experts from 4 Ozza accredited zoos traveled to Northeast Borneo to help with habitat restoration effects and other training to enhance animal welfare at a local zoo. Okay, so we have CREATE, we have SAFE, we have reintroduction, and now we have rehabilitation. Rehabilitation really more with aquatic animals. They are working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Ozza Zoos and Aquariums to rescue, rehabilitate, and care for wild animals, sea turtles, manatees, and sea otters until they can be released back into the wild. Aquatic animals are less likely to imprint on a caregiver. How do zoos and aquariums aid in research? In 2019, Ozza accredited facilities invested over $26 million on research and studied over 560 species and subspecies. Animal care, health, and welfare, 45%, are the Ozza community's most common focus of research, besides basic biology, which was 21%. Other research explored species and habitat conservation, 12%, sustainable animal collections, primarily focused on populations held in human care, was 10%. Conservation, education, and public engagement was 6%, which is really interesting. That's the lowest percent. Ozza members have access to diverse animal populations and research their behaviors, their biological, physiological, and psychological needs. And they kind of create this database. So if you're an Ozza accredited zoo, you can work with other professionals. Let's say a giraffe is in the zoo and there's a health issue. They go to that Ozza accredited database and have access to information, because Ozza is continuously just studying species care, how they interact. So let's go to your page 11, I believe, which is how zoos benefit society and the animals they protect. This is a Forbes magazine. Zoos are amongst the most popular tourist attractions in the world, with more than 700 million visitors annually. The staggering number of visitors alone suggests these institutes have a unique platform for reaching the public. The benefits of zoos to society are generally underestimated. So this is a really good argument for education and conservation. A newly published study found that zoos have an important role in how human society perceives and cares about the natural world. An international team of researchers from the UK, Ireland, and France conducted in-depth reviews of work done by zoos. So this is where I'm going to have one of my credible experts here is going to be Paul Rose, who says he's an animal behavior scientist, lecturer at the Center for Animal Research in Animal Behavior and Psychology at the University of Exeter. And he says, a zoo is more than a place of entertainment and a collection of animals. Zoos allow us to experience nature, They are a great resource for understanding more about conservation, biodiversity, and sustainability, as well as bringing many positive benefits to human mental health and well-being. People's well-being could improve as the result of engaging with the zoo's collection of animals. It can also be enhanced by accessibility to education about biodiversity. Check something really quickly here. So I keep hearing that word and biodiversity. Okay, what is biodiversity? The variation of the forms within a given ecosystem. Biodiversity found on Earth today consists of millions of distinct biological species. So basically, biodiversity is all of the species and animals on the planet. Just in case I just kept going, I keep hearing that word and I want to make sure that everybody knows exactly the definitions. He says, we believe that a well-being aim covers both animal welfare and societal well-being and incentivizes zoos to strive for better animal welfare, provide meaningful connection to nature, to benefit humans that come into contact with zoos work. So basically what he's saying here is the more people come to zoos and become educated and learn to care about animal conservation, the more they're going to hold zoos accountable. We need places, Rose says, of conservation, such as zoos, to provide us with the education and understanding about the natural world. For us to be educated, the aims of the zoos need to incorporate increased and meaningful engagement with society and local communities. One of the main strengths, according to Rose, is their combinations of attractive live animal displays with creative educational messaging, there's our educational component, such that zoos have the power to influence their visitors, eliciting actions, encouraging them to change their behavior to conserve wildlife. So this is the argument here he's making. If we educate all of those 700 million people walking through the doors of zoos per year, if we make them care, then number one, we hold zoos accountable, and number two, we create a better environment for the people and the animals. Lastly, I like my last article, and I would tell you that it's probably in your best interest to read the whole thing. This is James Burrell, a biodiversity scientist and science communicator. He's really kind of matter of fact about both sides. He sees, how the arguments against and for them are valid. But he does say there are 39 animal species currently listed by the IUCN as extinct in the wild. These are species that would totally have vanished were it not for zoos, were it not for captive populations. This is the single most important role zoos can play. So, even if you have issues with the zoos per se, that's one of those. For species whose survival in the wild looks in doubt, zoos set up insurance policies, and that was mentioned in the video population. I'm so sorry. There are captive groups of animals that could, in a worst case scenario, assist in reintroduction in the wild should the original population go extinct. The Amur leopard is an example. There are perhaps 35 to 65 left in the world. This is a species teetering right on the brink. There is a long-running breeding program with over 200 surviving in captivity. So a great example of insurance populations. Okay, so let's go to your outline. I think I've kind of mapped that one out pretty well. Body one. Zoological institutions today serve not only, I'm going to go ahead and share this. I'm just going to go ahead and share it. Yeah. Kind of go through this together. Okay. So here we go. Zoological institutions today serve not only as popular tourist attractions, but are particularly important in creating educational awareness of wild animals, which allows humans to care more about conservation around the world, For the variety of living species who live within it. Those of you who are watching, it's really interesting. You can see 2 people are looking at the website right now. So one strong argument in favor of continuing to maintain zoos is how animal enclosures can educate the public, but also instill a sense of conservation within them. So it's really interesting. I kind of made a mistake here. I'm going to pop that here because I really think that needs to go here. It is one of the missions of zoos today, along with education. Okay, so I really just think that that needs to be here instead of where I had it. And I told that in class, so I'm just going to go ahead and fix it on here. This is a valid argument since 50% of people live in cities, causing them to be completely disconnected from nature. So what I've gone here, I've kind of just explained the evolution of zoos. If they are OZA accredited, and as of March 2024, there are 236 zoos who follow specific requirements. So you want to go to an OZA affiliated zoo because they abide by strict animal welfare standards. OZA found the general public rate conservation and education as the most important roles. So you can see why they're kind of focusing on this as our main argument. This is all Paul Rose, animal behavior scientist. This is all his wording here. And I'll fix that here in a minute where I kind of went in there, and James Burrell. And then I added the California condor here. I even added a second one, the golden lion tamarin. You don't have to use them both. Obviously, I think the California condor is all that's necessary. The overarching premise of zoos today is they can bring attention to wild animal species, make the public care about them, and in doing so, perhaps raise awareness and charitable contributions to aid in future conservation of animals. Okay, body 2. This is all statistics. Statistical evidence proves the overarching successes zoos have contributed to animal conservation, as well as offering research programs to other members with the sole purpose to improve animal welfare. So this is the Safe Species Survival Plan. We talked about that one. Save, we talked about that one. Create, that launched this program here. I even included on here several OZA accredited zoos are joined forces with the manatee rescue and rehabilitation. They were able to provide critical care to injured and cold stunned manatees and assist partners in their release. So we went from survival species program, we went to rehabilitation programs. So you can see right there. And this really is more research. The third argument is really more research. What are they doing? The Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute's Conservation Ecology Center develops new and advanced analytical tools to study and model how ecosystems and species interact with their environment and how these systems respond to global changes. So here's an example, the Swift Fox Ecology Research Program. The swift fox species had been absent from the grasslands of the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation in Montana for 50 years. They were able to be reintroduced successfully. The Smithsonian Museum of Natural History defined biodiversity as the extraordinary variety of life on Earth. I did define it, biodiversity. I didn't remember that. As the extraordinary variety of life on Earth, from genes and species to ecosystems and the valuable functions they perform. OZA accredited zoos promote and improve biodiversity. OZA officials release information about how animal species under their care have become more vulnerable to climate change, what they can do to address habitat loss, and how to save and protect an animal species or ecosystem. So all in all, through OZA accredited zoos, considerable progress has been made in improving the humane treatment of wild animals, discovering more about specific species, how to protect them, as well as preserving their habitats and informing other zoos how to help animals either be introduced to the wild or rehabilitated. So zoos today are making an impact, providing a visual attraction while educating the public Informing them about necessary conservation efforts and promoting the protection of endangered species. In making a case to promote zoos, proponents have a valid argument when it comes to AZA accredited zoos, how serious they take their role in educating the public about a variety of wild animal species they might otherwise never encounter in their lifetime. Because zoos and aquariums are popular, they stand to make hefty profits, which means they're not going away anytime soon. As long as people will pay high price tickets to see exotic animals, zoos have an obligation to ensure humane treatment of the animals they hold in captivity and provide enclosures which resemble real-life habitats. Unfortunately, there are zoos who do not have an accreditation with AZA, nor do they follow animal health care safety requirements. This is why this is a controversial issue. So what we can do as citizens is don't visit the less the worse zoos. Visit the better zoos and make sure those stay open. So this concludes proponents of maintaining zoos. This was a tough subject. If you haven't done the other side, it's a very emotional side, especially if you're an animal lover. So just trying to make you look at something that you're going to have in your lifetime differently or with open eyes. Thank you for watching. And go ahead and, if you're brand new, one body paragraph. I would suggest the first one. You can do the second one if you want to. I think it's a little bit more difficult. If you've been in my class for over a year and you started last summer, you should be doing 2 body paragraphs. I have students that will do all 4, and they are progressing faster than anyone. Summer is a great time to challenge yourself, everyone. Okay, thanks for watching and have a great day.